What if the reason nothing has changed is not because you did not want it badly enough, but because a deeper part of you never agreed to receive it? You can hold a dream in your mind for 10 years and still keep waking up inside the same life. That is not failure, that is physics. You can picture wealth and still move through days shaped by lack. You can ache for love and repeatedly meet distance. You can whisper affirmations every morning and secretly strengthen the feeling that something is missing. The unsettling truth is this: reality is not misunderstanding you. It is responding with precision. The quantum field does not organize itself around your wishes. It organizes around your identity. Most people think desire is power. They believe that intensity creates influence. If they want it strongly enough, think about it long enough, imagine it clearly enough, life will eventually surrender. But observation is not desire. Observation is who you are being. Consciousness does not just mean thoughts floating in your head. It is the architecture beneath them. Your beliefs, your emotional baseline, the story your nervous system repeats when you are tired and unguarded. Desire flickers, identity stabilizes. You may want abundance, yet quietly identify as someone who must struggle. You may want recognition, yet carry the posture of the overlooked one. You may want peace, yet feel most familiar inside chaos. In every case, the stable pattern wins, not because the universe is testing you, not because timing is cruel, but because stability directs outcomes. In quantum systems, coherence determines what becomes real, and coherence means internal agreement. If one part of you longs for expansion, while another part clings to an old self-concept, the older structure will dominate. Structure overrides intention. This is why effort feels exhausting. You are trying to force a temporary decision against a long-established identity. You are not manifesting from your vision board. You are manifesting from your baseline. Your baseline is the emotional home you return to when nothing special is happening. It is the mood that settles back in after motivation fades. It is the version of you that shows up when no one is watching. And here is what changes everything. The field does not reward longing. It mirrors self-recognition. The moment you genuinely recognize yourself as the one who already lives differently, your signal shifts. Not because you tried harder, but because the observer changed. So the real question is no longer, what do you want? The real question is, who are you when the performance drops? Who are you in the quiet spaces? Who are you beneath the rehearsed affirmations? That unfiltered identity is what interacts with reality. If you have been wanting something for years without movement, maybe your desire is not weak. Maybe your identity is simply intact. And identity is not what you declare. It is the pattern your body has memorized. Repeated thoughts carve neural pathways. Repeated emotions train your nervous system. Over time, your body becomes loyal to familiar states. Even stress can feel safe. Even disappointment can feel predictable. Even lack can feel like home. And reality continues to echo that home. That is why change feels unsettling. You are not battling fate. You are confronting what feels familiar. When an emotional state is repeated long enough, the body begins to expect it. It learns the rhythm of it. It prepares for it before the mind even notices. Over time, the body stops asking whether a feeling is good or bad. It only asks whether it is known. If you have practiced struggle for years, ease can feel suspicious. If you have rehearsed rejection, closeness can feel threatening. If you have lived inside unpredictability, stability can feel unnatural. So when you reach for something beyond your current identity, your system reacts. Not loudly, subtly. There is hesitation, tension, a quiet impulse to return to what feels normal. And normal is what reality keeps confirming. Consciousness selects from infinite possibilities, yes, but it selects through the filter of internal agreement. If your thoughts declare expansion while your body prepares for contraction, there is no harmony, and life follows the deeper rhythm. This is why surface affirmations often collapse. They speak to the mind, but the body still carries an older script. Identity does not transform through repetition of words alone. It transforms through lived emotional experience. When you begin to feel yourself as the version who already lives differently, not as performance, not as fantasy, but as quiet embodiment, something recalibrates. Neural pathways adjust. Hormonal cycles soften. The nervous system starts recognizing a new emotional tone, and what becomes familiar stops feeling dangerous. When prosperity feels natural, you stop preparing for loss. When connection feels safe, you stop anticipating abandonment. When achievement feels ordinary, you stop bracing for collapse. At that point, nothing needs to be forced. Because identity is not just a mental picture, it is stored memory inside your physiology. Your past has left impressions in your nervous system. Those impressions carry a signature, and that signature is being broadcast constantly. Desire appears in moments, identity operates continuously, and reality responds to continuity. So if you want different outcomes, you do not amplify wanting. You loosen the grip of the old self. This feels uncomfortable because identity feels personal. It feels like you. But much of what you call you is repetition. Repeated thoughts, repeated reactions, repeated emotional loops. And repetition generates probability. If you consistently react as someone overlooked, you move towards spaces that overlook you. If you consistently feel like the one who must carry the burden, you encounter weight again and again. Not as punishment, but as consistency. The field does not choose randomly. It resolves toward the most stable pattern available, which means something powerful becomes possible. If you stabilize a new way of being long enough, emotionally, physically, behaviorally, your external results begin to reorganize. You do not chase outcomes. You alter the pattern that produces them. The issue is not that your dreams are too small. It is that your current identity is deeply rooted, and rooted patterns generate predictable realities. When you truly understand this, manifestation stops being about wishing. It becomes about reconditioning. Because reality is not asking what you hope for. It is responding to who you are being. In quantum physics, the observer is not passive. Observation is participation. Particles exist in multiple potentials, but the moment observation occurs, one path materializes, and the nature of the observer influences which path solidifies. Consciousness is not an afterthought of matter. It is the ground from which matter emerges, which means reality is not separate from awareness. It is shaped through it. You are not collapsing reality through effort. You are collapsing it through identity. You are not shaping reality through preference. You are shaping it through what you are stabilized as. If your sense of self is organized around insufficiency, even opportunity will be interpreted through shortage. If your sense of self is organized around doubt, even achievement can turn into tension. Reality does not follow what you intellectually select. It follows what your identity experiences as consistent. This is why breakthroughs are often sabotaged quietly. Imagine someone who has always seen themselves as the one left behind. When a door opens, they do not walk through it freely. They hesitate. They question timing. They search for hidden risk. Nothing outside closed the door. The internal expectation narrowed the opening. Life stabilizes around expectation. And expectation is identity translated into perception. Two people can stand inside the same moment and walk away with entirely different outcomes. The event itself is neutral. Interpretation gives it direction. When identity shifts, perception reorganizes. When perception reorganizes, meaning changes. When meaning changes, behavior adjusts, and behavior begins to confirm a different reality. But the first movement is invisible. To become someone new is not cosmetic, it is structural. Your personality is a predictable sequence of thoughts, emotions, and reactions. If that sequence remains unchanged, your external world will echo its predictability. To experience something different, you must become unfamiliar to your former self. Not chaotic, just no longer automatic. When you interrupt an old reaction, you interrupt a future outcome. When you respond in a way your past self would not, something subtle but powerful recalibrates. The observer has shifted. And once the observer shifts, what solidifies next begins to shift as well. Your brain is constantly filtering reality. It deletes what does not match your self-image. It magnifies what confirms it. If you see yourself as unfortunate, you will overlook openings. If you see yourself as capable, you will detect solutions faster. Possibility may be widely available, but recognition is selective. Manifestation is not pulling something from emptiness. It is selecting from existing probability. And selection requires resonance. If abundance is available as potential, but you do not experience yourself as someone who can sustain it, you may encounter it briefly, but you will not maintain it. Sustainability requires normalization. When something feels normal, there is no emotional turbulence around it. No inner negotiation, no dramatic anticipation, just quiet congruence. This is why identity work is not motivational language. It is participation in creation. Each time you embody the emotional tone of your desired self without strain, you are refining perception. You are adjusting expectation. You are training the observer to recognize a new standard. Desire moves towards something. Identity settles around something. And what you settle around shapes what stays. If you have wanted something for years, ask a different question. Has this outcome become ordinary within you? Not thrilling, not distant, ordinary. When something becomes ordinary internally, there is no spike of excitement and no shadow of doubt. There is steadiness. And steadiness is what reality organizes around. There is a version of you for whom your desire is not extraordinary. For that version, it is simply life. That version exists as potential. But potential solidifies only when it matches your emotional default. Many people try to elevate themselves temporarily. They create bursts of gratitude. They manufacture intensity. They try to amplify belief, but bursts fade, and temporary states cannot replace a long-established emotional default. What truly shapes what comes next is the state you return to when you stop trying. Your emotional default is the feeling that greets you before the day begins. It is the atmosphere inside you when no one is watching, the undertone beneath your thoughts. Is it relaxed or guarded, open or braced, certain or quietly doubtful? That undertone guides everything. From a neurobiological perspective, your autonomic nervous system regulates this internal climate. If it is subtly preparing for disappointment, even your most beautiful visualizations will rest on tension. And tension carries the message not yet. The body does not respond to language. It responds to safety. If your internal stance is, "I must prove myself," then simplicity will feel undeserved. If your underlying belief is good things fade, then stability will feel temporary. Reality echoes what is consistent. Intensity cannot overpower consistency. You can passionately speak about prosperity while internally anticipating shortage, and life will answer the anticipation. But here is where your agency returns. Your internal climate can be retrained. Every time you regulate your nervous system without external reassurance, you are redefining self. Every time you refuse to replay an old emotional reflex, you weaken its authority. Transformation rarely looks dramatic. It looks like steadiness. When you remain composed where you once reacted, your biology updates. When you stay grounded where you once sought validation, your expectations quietly recalibrate. And recalibrated expectation changes what solidifies next. The more internally steady you become, the less you need evidence. And needing evidence is still dependence. There comes a quiet phase in this process. You stop tracking. You stop asking if it is working. You stop measuring time. You begin moving through life as though the outcome is natural. Not because you are forcing belief, but because doubt no longer feels convincing. That is alignment, and alignment resolves faster than excitement ever could. Pause for a moment. When you think about what you desire, does your body tighten or soften? Is there pressure or space? That subtle sensation tells you more than your affirmations. There is a threshold in manifestation that few speak about. It is not the moment of enthusiasm, not the moment of hope, not even the moment of intense belief. It is the moment when the former version of you is no longer emotionally available. Before that, you oscillate. Some days you embody the future, other days you revisit the past. Oscillation delays resolution. What accelerates change is dominance. When the new identity feels more natural than the old one, the shift becomes irreversible. When doubting feels out of character, when chasing feels unnecessary, when pleading feels foreign, that is when reality begins to rearrange quickly, because your nervous system is no longer anchored to an outdated reference point. Think of it this way. If you tune a radio to one frequency, you receive a specific broadcast. If you adjust the dial, the music changes instantly. You do not negotiate with the previous station, you simply tune elsewhere. Identity works the same way. Your previous self was tuned to repetition, delay, and effort. Your emerging self is tuned to ease, timing, and coherence. You are not forcing outcomes. You are adjusting the dial. And when the signal stabilizes, what plays next cannot help but match it. This is why the real work is internal relocation, not external persuasion. You are not convincing life to change. You are repositioning the center from which you live. When that center shifts, outcomes reorganize. Not as reward, not as miracle, but as coherence selecting a new direction. The quantum field is not sentimental. It is informational. It resolves toward the most stable configuration available. The moment your inner statement becomes, "This is who I am now," reality follows that definition. There is no fireworks in this moment, no dramatic announcement. It feels almost ordinary. You simply no longer feel like the former version of yourself. You stop replaying old narratives. You stop rehearsing shortage. You stop preparing for disappointment. You begin moving as if what you desire is already integrated. And integration carries quiet authority. From a neurological view, this is when old neural networks lose strength. Emotional charges tied to past experiences soften. Hormonal rhythms regulate. Stress responses decrease. From a quantum view, the observer is no longer the same. And once the observer shifts, the outcome cannot remain identical. People often describe this as everything changing at once. But nothing shifted randomly. The internal center of gravity moved, and life reorganized around that movement. Reality was never withholding. It was waiting for consistency. Consistency of being, consistency of perception, consistency of identity. When that locks into place, manifestation stops feeling like effort. It becomes reflection. You no longer ask, "How do I make this happen?" You ask, "Who am I operating as now?" And that answer determines what crystallizes next. There is a final, subtle transformation. You stop seeing manifestation as an action. You begin recognizing it as your nature. The field is not something outside responding to you. You are an expression of it, localized and aware. When identity shifts, the field is not reacting from afar. It is reorganizing through your awareness. This is not self-improvement. It is participation in creation. When you stabilize a new self-concept, you are not persuading reality. You are altering the framework through which reality becomes visible. You change the lens, and what comes into focus changes with it. At this stage, something powerful unfolds. You stop reacting to temporary appearances. Old scenarios may surface briefly. Delays may attempt to trigger former emotions, but they no longer define you, because the older version of you is no longer dominant. And when dominance shifts internally, outcomes must eventually follow. There comes a calm certainty, not loud, not dramatic, just a grounded knowing. You are no longer trying to manifest, you are living from a different center. And from that center, what collapses next is no longer accidental. It is aligned. There may still be moments when your external world briefly resembles your past, but this time, you do not interpret it as failure. You do not collapse into old meaning. You remain steady, and that steadiness is the evidence. When identity has truly transformed, familiar circumstances no longer provoke familiar reactions. You do not rush to fix. You do not spiral into self-doubt. You do not dramatize delay. You observe. And without emotional fuel, the old cycle cannot regenerate. This is mastery. Mastery is not controlling outcomes. It is remaining internally coherent regardless of temporary appearances. At this depth, something becomes undeniable. Nothing was blocking you. Nothing was withholding from you. Reality was never confused. There was only inconsistency within the self. Now consistency has replaced intensity. Now you are no longer chasing results. You are inhabiting inevitability. Inevitability is quiet. It does not argue. It does not demand reassurance. It does not check the clock. It moves with calm certainty. Manifestation begins to feel effortless, not because life becomes perfect, but because you stop resisting what is unfolding. You remain anchored in who you are becoming, not who you used to be. And that anchoring stabilizes what crystallizes next. If you can sense that shift within you, If you recognize that you are no longer the same person who first began wanting, then you are already crossing the threshold. There is a final realization that changes everything. Manifestation is not something you do, it is something you are. The field is not outside you responding from a distance. You are an expression of the same intelligence you once tried to influence. When identity changes, reality does not react to you, it reorganizes through you. This is not self-improvement, it is self-recognition. And once you fully recognize who you are stabilized as, you stop asking for permission from circumstances. You stop waiting for proof. You become the version of yourself for whom the outcome is natural. And when that becomes natural, what collapses next cannot contradict it. That is the quiet power of identity.